Speaking of pros, the definition of that is Gregg Murphy. Gregg, welcome back. So great to have you with us.
Good to be with you, Steve. How are you?
Doing well. Thanks for asking. Rob Thomson and Don Mattingly. This is not an indictment at all on Rob Thomson because I thought he did a great job. But what kind of at least touch has Don Mattingly added that is his own that has allowed the Phillies maybe to have some recent success?
Well, it's an interesting question because even when Don took over, the day he took over from Rob, he was asked, what are you going to do differently? How are you going to be a different person or a different kind of manager than Rob Thomson? And he looked at the cameras and basically said, I think we're pretty similar. We're both longtime baseball guys. We try to, play the game the right way. We try to get the most out of the guys. I think the biggest difference, honestly, Steve, in the last 10 days, 12 days, has just been a little bit more sense of urgency, perhaps, within the guys. I think they did feel the shakeup, for lack of a better word, in terms of realizing that it's very often or almost always the case if a manager or coach gets relieved from his duties, it's almost always the players that are the reason for that. And I think that was the case here. I think the reason for the dismissal of Rob Thomson because the 26 guys in that room were not playing that well, and for whatever reason they weren't. So, it's the last week has been really great. It's coincided with the managerial change, but I think it really has to do a lot more with maybe the competition they're playing and just the way they're going about their business at this point.
See, I completely agree with that because, look, I think Rob Thompson's a terrific manager. Alex Cora is obviously a terrific manager. Have both teams played better since the shock of hey, look, when you do something like this with organizations that have expectations and you make a change like that, that's the equivalent of taking the paddles and going, boom, come on, charge.
Exactly right.
It has nothing to do with guys that know how to manage because they do. Jesus Luzardo gets the ball tonight. You look at the base numbers in the season so far, not great. More hits than innings pitched, given up. Nice, really nice, almost 6-to-1 strikeout to walk ratio. But his last two starts, 13 and a third, 10 hits, 2 runs. What has he found in the last couple of starts that look more like the Jesus Luzardo people expect him to be?
Yeah, it's an interesting case because he's got obviously just a boatload of talent. We saw that most of last year. You remember right in the middle of May last year, he went through a couple of games where he couldn't do anything right, but then he refound it and he was terrific for the remainder of the season. I really think that for Jesus, the stuff is there. It's just a matter of getting ahead in counts and staying ahead in counts. Not falling behind. If you fall behind, then he's got to resort to throwing fastballs, and when you're doing that, even if it's 97, 98, these guys can square them up if they're in the middle of the zone. So I think, being able to get ahead of counts and then use the secondary stuff is exactly how most pitchers need to pitch, and it's how Jesus certainly needs to pitch. But, and I also think he ran into a little bit of bad luck in terms of the numbers. There were a lot of balls that were falling in. I think, we saw that throughout the staff in general. But his last couple of starts, man, he's been lights out. And, I think against this Colorado Rockies lineup tonight, we're probably going to see a little bit more of the same.
I do want to mention one thing about the Colorado Rockies lineup. The guy that leads them in home runs and RBIs and hitting .318 is Mickey Moniak. Now, of the 11 home runs, 9 have been at Coors Field. His batting average is exponentially higher at Coors Field than it is on the road. I think it's .256 on the road, but it's .318 overall. But he was the first overall pick in the draft. He was by the Phillies and so forth. Is this just the case, Gregg, of, hey, everybody's on their own clock and the clock's finally kicked in for this guy?
I think that's a big part of it. I really do. There was a reason he was selected one of one, back when the Phils took him. And the kid has a lot of talent. It took him a while to grow into his body, I think. He's coming out of high school. He had a lot of growing to do. He's a full-grown man now. He's put on a ton of muscle and a ton of weight. So I do think that was a big part of it. I also think, the pressure of being the first overall pick in the draft and then, trying to come through a system like Philadelphia and play in Philadelphia, that might have been a lot for him as a young man. And I think that we've seen that change of scenery has been a good thing for him. He's such a terrific guy, and we got to know him, obviously, when he was in our system and up on the big league club for that short period of time. So I'm pulling for him. I don't know if the numbers will start to regress a little bit as the season goes on, probably. But you know what? If he's a 275, 280 kind of hitter, and he's going to hit you 25 home runs, that's a big league ball player, and that's all you can ask for when you select a guy out of high school. So I'm rooting for Mickey. We're actually going to have him on the pregame show on Sunday as part of our Sunday sit-down conversation. So I'm looking forward to talking to him about it.
That's great. Because, look, as you know, in what I do with Penn State football and Penn State basketball, one of the worst things I can think of, and I think about this all the time, to look at an 18 to 20-year-old, so you'd be a freshman, sophomore, whatever, he's a bust. Nobody's a bust at 18. They're like, come on. Right? Everybody on the maturity level, and I'm talking about physical, mental, and so forth, they're all on their own clock. Some guys like Saquon Barkley come out, and they're great right away. Most others take a little bit of time. I've seen fifth-year guys where finally all the tumblers clicked in, and they turned into an NFL prospect. And you see it all the time. You see it all the time, Gregg. I mean, especially with young guys going through the minor league system. And to me, this is an example of one of those guys where he's not a bust. He's a very talented guy, but finally things fell into place for him.
Yeah, I totally agree. You see it every year, right? All of a sudden, a 25-year-old, a 26-year-old comes into his own in the big leagues and starts playing at a very high level, and you're like, well, where was this guy? And the answer is he was right there. He was just figuring some things out. It's a tough game. So, I'm really happy for Mickey, and, he hit a couple of home runs against the Phils when we were in Colorado. We don't need to see any of that over the course of the weekend. But for the rest of the year, I hope he excels, and I would love to see him as a member of the All-Star team playing back here in Philadelphia this year. That would be a great story.
All right. So on the ball club itself, you mentioned that, the players have maybe a more of a sense of urgency, like, hey, look what happened here. Where are they better right now? I mean, is it every phase of the game, or is there one phase that's picked it up and has kind of like taken a little balance away from another?
Yeah, well, I think that's a pretty easy answer. And the answer over the past 8, 9, 10 games, whatever you want to, is the starting pitching has been significantly better. I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, but I think the first 23 or so ERA in the 4s. And over the last, 10 games or so, that starter ERA's in the 2s and that team ERA's in the high 2s. So, pitching has been better, and anybody that follows baseball knows that if you get good pitching, you got a chance to win. And that's what it's how this team was built, and that's how they expect to win. They expect to get really good starting pitching. They expect these guys to go deep into games, keep the run total around 3, and then hand it off to the bullpen to finish it up. And when they do that, even if the offense isn't clicking on all cylinders, which I still don't think it is, even if it's not, you're gonna win a lot of games. And then when that offense starts to kick in, when Trey Turner starts to find it again, when Kyle Schwarber gets into one of his grooves, I mean, that's when they start winning by 7-2, 7-3, and start rolling off 8 of 10, consistently. So I think that's still to come. But right now they're leaning on the starting pitching, and I think that's just fine because that's what they want.
What kind of emotional lift? Not just what the guy can do, because the guy's a heck of a pitcher. Just the emotional lift that Zach Wheeler is now taking the ball again. What does that mean?
Well, I think we're seeing what it means, right? I think it just allows everybody to kind of take a little bit of a deep breath and kind of settle back into their role. And, Christopher Sanchez, as terrific as he was last year, second in the Cy Young voting, putting that ace of the staff moniker on a young man like that's a lot to carry.
Yeah.
Now with Zach back, he can slide back into that, co-ace role, if you will. The same is true with a guy like Jesus. You're going from a you need to be a number 2 or a backup number 1, and now you slide into a backup 2 and a 3. It just allows everybody to kind of get back into their comfort zone. And Zach's an unbelievable competitor, and I think the guys feed off of him in that regard too. So, one guy back on a roster, even though he only plays once every 5 days, it can make a difference in the clubhouse, and certainly we're seeing that effect from Zach right off the bat.
Rough outing for Andrew Painter last night. Look, it's just sometimes you just have that night. I set up inside, he throws the ball outside. I set up outside, he throws the ball inside because you're out of sync. What kind of prospect do you think he is for them? If he's right, what can he do in the middle of that rotation?
Well, if he's right, I think that's exactly what he is right now. He's a middle-of-the-rotation guy. And as much as Andrew has struggled, and he certainly has struggled, I think we've seen flashes. We saw one game where he kind of put it all together and he was pretty good. But the rest of the games, he's had innings where he's really struggled. He's had innings where he's looked really good. But, again, still a pretty young man and just learning at the big league level for sure. I still think the baseball minds in the organization think he is a very high-ceiling guy, a guy that's going to be a big part of the rotation for a long, long time. But he is certainly going through some growing pains right now. He, at the moment, simply cannot pitch from behind. He has to get ahead in the counts or he does not have success. And, he was really struggling with the command last night. And, give the A's credit. They took it to him. That's a good A's lineup. And they jumped all over him quickly, and they kind of they rattled his cage, and I don't think he was able to recover from that. But I still think the upside is very high for Andrew, but it's a learning process, and we're going to watch him learn.
Alec Bohm, and you eventually have to get around it because you see what he can mean to a lineup, that extra bat with some power and some pop. He's up to 227 now, but the weird thing is, he's 111 at home. Like 111 at home? I mean, that is a tough way to live. When you've talked to people in the organization, what do they think about his swing? Is he just missing? Is there a hard contact that's just leading to outs? What's going on with him?
Well, I don't think we can make an argument that there's been a ton of hard contact because there simply hasn't been yet. Do I think it's there? For sure. I mean, we've seen Alec Bohm. He has a track record. The guy can hit at the big league level. For whatever reason, he's just not barreling up balls at the moment. He's got a lot of excuse, and I'm not trying to either, but, they are human beings, and for Alec, there's some things that are happening off the field that I have to believe are weighing on him a little bit. But that said, when he gets to the ballpark, he's been a pro. He's been a guy that's been putting in the work, and he's trying to figure it out. It's a tough place to figure it out, at the major league level. It just simply is. And he's been scuffling now. Would it surprise me if it, come June 1st, he starts clicking and gets it going? Yeah. No, it wouldn't surprise me at all. And guess what? If the Phillies are going to get to where they want to be, they need Alec Bohm. They need Alec Bohm in the middle of that lineup to be doing, at least what we have seen in the past, or at least be a shadow of that kind of guy, because the options are not great beside that. So you do need Alec Bohm to kind of figure it out. And I think that's what Don Mattingly was trying to tell reporters yesterday is that, look, he's struggling now, and we're going to give him a day off. Maybe they give him 2, I don't know. But when he gets back in there, they kind of need him to hit his way out of this slump because ultimately, in June, July, and August, Alec Bohm is going to be in that lineup, and they're going to need him to be hit.
I remember talking to the great basketball player Rick Barry one time, and he said, "Look, I'm a shooter. I have to shoot my way out of it." Right? I mean, that's how he goes about it. Look, we know what the Phillies can do with the long ball. Schwarber's got 12, Harper's got 9, even Turner and Garcia have 4 home runs each. So does Brandon Marsh. But how is this team, in your opinion, at manufacturing runs when the power isn't there?
Not great, at least not at the moment. I think they can be better. And, circling way back to your first question, I do think we've seen a little bit more of small ball over the last 10 days or so from some of the guys. in terms of trying to manufacture those runs than we saw earlier in the year. It was kind of home run or bust early in the season, and they weren't hitting the home runs, so it was a lot of busts. But I don't think this team is necessarily built to play baseball that way, but
right.
That doesn't mean that they can't play baseball that way when the time calls for it. And they're going to need to, especially, when you see the droughts with the power, and they've had them, they got to figure out ways to get guys home from third. They've got to figure out a way to get a guy from second to home with less than 2 outs. Manufacture it, lay a bunt down, hit and run, hit behind a runner, do whatever you have to do. And all of these guys are capable of doing it. It's just a matter of committing to it and, working on it and then going ahead and doing it in the game. And like I said, I think we've seen a little bit more of that over the last 2 weeks, and I think we've seen some success. So hopefully that kind of steamrolls into more success. But I think they have to be better at that, and I think they probably know that as well.
Yeah, they finally get Duran back out of the bullpen. So in a 9-1 game, Don does something really smart. He puts him out there in a 9-1 game and says, "Look, go out and get some work." And it was a rough inning for him. But again, back to the emotional part. The fact that they do have him back, what can that mean emotionally, but also performance-wise?
Yeah, I think it's very similar to getting Zach back in that it allows everybody to kind of slide back into their roles. Brad Keller, in that 7-8 inning role is one of the best in the National League right now. Ryan Kerkering, similar. Put him in the 7th, put him in the 8th. Find that pocket that works, but he's throwing the ball really well. And then it allows guys like, Tanner Banks to slide into that 5 and 6 role if you need them, and that kind of thing. So it just settles everything back to where it feels like it should be. And you're right, having him get out there and get some work, it was akin to him going on a rehab assignment without ever leaving Philadelphia. Yeah. He went out there, he got his work in, he was rusty for sure. But he'll benefit from that tonight when he takes the ball in the 9th inning in a tight ball game because he's already gotten that one under his belt. So as long as he's healthy, he is a 5-star player on any roster in the big leagues, and he's on this roster, so that's good to know.
Gregg, outstanding as always. By the way, really looking forward to the Mickey Moniak interview coming up. I think that'll be really interesting. And great work as always. Thanks a lot for your valuable time today. We greatly appreciate it.
You got it, Steve. Always great to talk to you. Thanks so much.
The outstanding Gregg Murphy. What a great job he does.